The avoidance of love is the deepest form of self-rejection. Carl Jung. You've been with someone who always kept you at a safe distance. Never too close for real intimacy, but never too far to call it a breakup. Someone who made you keep explaining why you need more love, and then made you feel guilty for even asking. They didn't do anything terrible. They didn't scream. They didn't cheat. They just slowly pulled away every time you got closer. They said they needed space. They needed time. They weren't good at emotions. And you, in the silence, started blaming yourself. Maybe I'm too much. Maybe I should have been more patient. Maybe I betrayed them by walking away. But wait, when did choosing peace for yourself become a crime? In today's society, we glorify forgiveness and emotional endurance, but we rarely talk about their shadow side. They keep us stuck in relationships that never really begin. Relationships where you aren't loved, you're merely tolerated. This video isn't just about understanding the avoidant partner. It's about helping you stop apologizing for leaving because you didn't betray them. You were simply being loyal to yourself. Avoidant people never say everything. They love you in their own way, but they always hold back the most essential part, the part deep inside where the wounds live, where fear of being exposed or dependent hides behind quiet control. They seek safety, control, and avoid emotional exposure, even to themselves. Being with an avoidant partner is like living in a beautiful house, elegant, calm, structured, but strangely, the lights are never turned on. You stumble through the shadows, trying not to trip, trying to feel, trying to connect, and then you begin to wonder if something's wrong with you because you can't seem to see them clearly. They don't betray you in obvious ways, no loud drama, no harsh abandonment, but the emotional ambiguity, the sudden withdrawal, the cold silences after a warm evening, those are what hurt you the most. And then one day, you choose to leave. But what surprises you isn't the breakup, it's the guilt that follows. A quiet, haunting guilt. Not from them, from within you. I didn't give them enough time. I walked away when they were finally starting to open up. What if I was the first person they ever truly loved? They're not bad people. They just never learned how to love. You start seeing yourself as heartless, even though you were the one holding the emotional space, trying, waiting, staying patient. In the end, you're the one who left. And deep down, there's a voice whispering that you abandoned a soul who was just trying to love you in the only way they could. That's the cruel paradox of relationships with avoidance. They keep you at a distance, but you're the one who feels guilty for walking away. They made you the sole rower in a boat meant for two, and when you dropped the oars, exhausted, and climbed out, it felt like betrayal. Why? Because you never clearly saw their wounds. You only sensed them in fleeting glances, hesitant silences, in the subtle sadness in their eyes. And you, with a deeply attached heart, interpreted it as, they're trying, they just don't know how. But here's what we forget. Love is not just a feeling, it is action. They didn't show up. They didn't step forward. They didn't repair, didn't grow, didn't commit. They chose temporary distance over deep engagement, silence over apology, withdrawal over maturity. You cannot stay in a relationship where love is one-sided and call that patience. You did not abandon them. You simply stopped abandoning yourself. The guilt you feel after leaving isn't proof you did something wrong. It's the result of having lived too long in the role of the healer, the one who waits, who understands, who stays, until you forget that you too deserve to be clearly, deeply, freely loved. And it is precisely from that point that guilt begins to take root. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you've lived too long in a role that never truly belonged to you. The guilt after leaving, especially from a relationship with an avoidant, isn't the typical pain of heartbreak. It's not just longing. It's not just sadness. It carries with it a strange, persistent voice. I abandoned them. And suddenly, you find yourself wondering, if I had just loved them better, been more patient, would they have changed? You start to feel like a traitor to love, to your promises, or maybe even to the identity of being a good person. But here's the truth. You didn't betray anyone. You just started being honest. There's a psychological phenomenon called survivor guilt, the guilt of the one who made it out. According to the American Psychological Association, APA, this is a natural emotional response that often follows extreme or traumatic experiences. It occurs when someone feels guilty for having survived or escaped something that others could not. In romantic contexts, survivor guilt often arises when you leave a relationship where the other person seems more fragile, more wounded, or more dependent. You're not just carrying memories, you're carrying the heavy thought, I hurt them by walking away, I left them behind. That's when your nervous system, especially if you were shaped in environments that required constant emotional vigilance, kicks in to protect itself. Maybe you were once the child who had to be the good one, the one who read everyone's mood, the one who never upset anyone. You were programmed to take responsibility for other people's feelings. The avoidant doesn't demand much, but their very lack of emotional demands, feedback, or connection makes you work even harder to fill in the blanks. Every silence, every withdrawal, every emotional absence, you explain it away. They're just scared. They've been hurt before. So, they don't know how to love. Until you've stepped fully into neurological defense mode, where loving means fixing, absorbing, and sacrificing. That's when guilt is no longer just an emotion. It becomes your default operating system. You feel guilty for walking away. You feel guilty for no longer being the rescuer. You feel guilty for finally telling yourself the truth. I can't live like this anymore. In a relationship with an avoidant, they rarely come off as the obvious aggressor. They don't yell. They don't walk out first. They don't say overtly hurtful things. They choose not to choose. They go silent. They drift. They leave you in the dark. What wounds you the most isn't their cruelty, it's their passivity. You kept waiting. You kept hoping. And because they didn't explicitly hurt you, you assumed you had to stay because technically they didn't do anything wrong. But here's what you need to realize. Avoidance is also a form of harm. The lack of participation, lack of presence, lack of repair, these aren't just personality quirks to be tolerated. They're boundaries you need to recognize and respond to, not reasons to keep proving yourself. Survivor guilt, the shame and emotional fog that follows, leaving someone who didn't do anything wrong, is a trap. A trap especially easy to fall into if your nervous system is wired to seek approval and avoid abandonment. It keeps you in the role of the better person, even when it's eating away at your sanity. But you didn't walk away from them, you walked away from a role. The role of the only one who can wait, tolerate, and heal them. A role that was unbalanced, unrewarded, and never-ending, and most importantly, never invited them to grow. Because the truth is, avoidants aren't wounded children waiting for rescue. They are adults with choices. And the choice they made was not to connect. Real love doesn't ask you to be someone's therapist. It doesn't demand that you give up yourself in hopes of being noticed. It doesn't make you suffer to prove your loyalty. You are not wrong for having loved them, but you are especially not wrong for needing to stop. Because, in the end, if a relationship requires you to carry the entire emotional weight, maintain the connection, fix the dysfunction, and hope on their behalf, then the first person you need to leave isn't them. It's the version of yourself you lost trying to love them. And once you begin to see this unconscious pattern, something vital shifts. You start to pull back the idealization you unknowingly gave them during the relationship. You realize that you didn't fall in love with who they truly are. You fell in love with the possibility of who they could become if only they allowed themselves to be loved. That is the beginning of the third movement, the reframing. No longer are you blaming yourself for not staying long enough. For the first time, you dare to see them not as someone wounded needing rescue, but as an adult who has chosen emotional immaturity. Avoidants appear as if they don't love anyone, but the truth is, they're terrified of love. Not because they don't want connection, but because connection threatens their control. To love means to open a door that leads into a dark, uncleaned room in their psyche, filled with fears of dependence, exposure, rejection, and emotional collapse. Every time you got closer, they felt unsafe. Their reflex is to cool down emotions, not lean into them. Their withdrawal, vagueness, emotional flatness, and distance, those weren't conscious attacks on you. They were unconscious defenses, formed by early relational trauma and reinforced over years of nervous system memory. The cruel truth, they weren't betraying you. They were betraying their own feelings. And someone who betrays themselves will inevitably betray the ones who love them. You saw them as a child alone, emotionally curled up in a corner. And you were touched, you believed, you understood them. That you were the only one who could see their soft side. But no, you weren't seeing a child. You were seeing yourself. The version of you that never got the emotional closeness you deserved. You weren't connecting with them, you were trying to complete an old wound inside you through them. You were replaying a familiar script. They pulled away. You stepped forward. They went silent. You tried to understand. They disconnected. You loved harder. That isn't love. That's a neurobiological ritual, one your body remembers from childhood. And now comes the painful clarity. Avoidants are not the victims in this dynamic. They are the ones who chose not to engage. They know that when they pull back, you'll panic. When they disconnect, you'll chase. When they freeze, you'll warm the space with your presence. They are not weak. They control the relationship through silence and ambiguity. You didn't walk away from a helpless child. You walked away from a grown adult who chose to keep playing the role of a child to avoid responsibility. You didn't betray someone who needed help. You betray yourself when you continue to stay. Every moment you wait for them to change is a moment you postpone your own emotional growth. Every effort to decode them is a clever way of avoiding your own grief, the grief of being alone. Again, because the truth is, you didn't want them to change. You just wanted someone finally to stay with you. But that can never happen with someone who always leaves when you come close. This is where the cycle must break. Stop loving people with the hope that they'll eventually see you as worth staying for. Stop thinking that if you're kind, patient, and selfless enough, they'll learn to be intimate. Intimacy cannot be taught or forced. It can only happen when two people choose to stay at the same time, with the same energy. They are not a locked door you haven't figured out how to open. They are a wall that was never designed to open. And it's time to stop blaming yourself for knocking. And the moment you stop idealizing them, stop seeing them as a cute, wounded child, you begin to see clearly. You're not in a relationship. You're in a role. The role of the only one who understands them. The only one sensitive enough to touch the part of them they keep hidden. The only one loving enough to stay even when they ignore you. The only one strong enough to remain even when they never invited you to stay. But is staying like that really love? Or is it just an addiction to the healer role nurtured by your own old wounds? That is where part 4 opens the hardest part. Redefining your own value in love. Love is not a therapy school. You are not your partner's psychotherapist. You were not born to pave the way for them to learn how to connect. And you certainly have no obligation to stay when they refuse their own healing journey. No amount of love is enough for you to hold the healer position while they never face their own wounds. No kindness is enough to make a grown adult choose change if they're not ready for it. The feeling that only I understand them is not love. It's an illusion, a very common one, especially for those with anxious attachment. You believe you're special, that you have the power to reach parts of them no one else can. You think that if you just love enough, they'll open up. And if they don't open up, you must have done something wrong. You blame yourself again. When they go silent, you assume you talk too much. When they withdraw, you think you came on too strong. When they drift, you believe you're not interesting enough, not safe enough to earn their trust. You turn their inability to connect into your personal failure. And in the process, you erode your own self-worth. You can't love them for them. You also can't grow up for them. Healing cannot be handed to someone. It only arrives when a person chooses it for themselves, by themselves. If they don't choose to face their emotions, don't choose to learn responsible love, don't choose to connect, don't choose to speak up, don't choose to stay, then everything you do only delays the pain. You delay the grief by clinging to hope. You delay the truth by making excuses for them. You delay yourself by living as a supporter instead of becoming someone who deserves to be loved plainly. Many ask, but if I leave, who will love them the way they need? The answer is, no one if they don't choose to love themselves first. Love is not self-sacrifice to the point of depletion. It's not you becoming the light that guides someone out of a darkness they refuse to face. It's not you dimming your own light so you won't blind them. That isn't love. That is abandoning yourself. Love is walking forward together. No one stands still. No one struggles alone. No one carries the weight for the other. You can't keep loving someone who's running from themselves and expect them to turn back and embrace you. Because what they're running from isn't you, it's the part of themselves they refuse to acknowledge. You can't force them to face what they're not ready to see. You can't make them grow up just because you're ready to. And you certainly can't call it love when only you are moving forward. If there is one thing to remember from this part, it is, you don't need to make someone understand you to be worthy of love. You don't need to prove your kindness by staying with someone who doesn't appreciate it. You don't need to earn love by healing someone else. You were worthy from the moment you began. When you decide to walk away from an avoidant, you're not just leaving them behind. You're leaving behind the role of the rescuer, the part in the shared fantasy where you alone understood them, believed that if you were patient and self-sacrificing enough, they would finally open their heart. In that script, your mission was to teach them how to love responsibly, while they simply healed in their own time. But the harsh truth is, they only really open up when no one is left waiting. And the moment you step away, they may notice the void, but that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to heal yourself. 1. Identify your old wounds. First, you must bravely face the old wounds you've unconsciously carried through every relationship. Fear of abandonment, the inner voice that whispers, if I don't try endlessly, I'll end up alone. Unworthiness, the belief, I'm not good enough unless they reciprocate my love. Healer syndrome, the conviction that only by saving someone else are you worthy of love. These wounds don't disappear simply because you leave. They smolder beneath the surface and can push you into the savior role again in future relationships. The first step is to name these false beliefs out loud to yourself. I fear being alone. I believe only I am good enough. I see love as self-sacrifice. 2. Stop blaming yourself. Next, you must stop equating your worth with your ability to save others. You are not responsible for wounds they refuse to heal. Whenever the thought, I abandoned them, arises, pause and remind yourself, I am not at fault for needing peace. I am not at fault for setting boundaries. Boundaries are not walls to keep others out, they are lines of self-respect. You give yourself permission to say, enough, to roles that demand you suffer and wait forever. You invite yourself back to your original value. You are worthy of love simply because you exist. 3. Rebuild your relationship with yourself. After dismantling those false beliefs, carve out time to heal the most important relationship, the one with yourself. Consider these steps. Journaling. Chronicle your emotional journey from heartbreak to your decision to leave. Notice self-critical thoughts, then cross them out and replace them with affirmations. I was brave to walk away. I deserve love. Mindfulness divided by meditation. Spend 5-10 minutes daily observing your breath, body sensations, and arising emotions, fear, guilt, relief, without judgment. Practice being a witness to yourself. Self-care. Rediscover activities you abandoned while waiting for them. Stroll in the park. Read a favorite book. Cook a nourishing meal. Reconnect with close friends, or explore a new hobby. Each act of self-care lays another brick in rebuilding your self-worth. 4. Establish healthy boundaries. Once you've reconnected with yourself, the next step is setting clear boundaries in all future relationships. Time for yourself. If someone goes silent too long, you don't wait indefinitely. You say, I need consistent communication. Please let me know if you can't do that. Emotional limits. You need not carry others' burdens. You can empathize, but you aren't obligated to solve everyone's pain. You have the right to say, I can't hold that for you. Core values. Define what you need to feel loved, respect, reciprocity, partnership, and refuse situations where these basics are unmet. Boundaries aren't about pushing people away, they're about protecting yourself from slipping back into old roles. 5. Redefine love. Finally, healing isn't about reviving an idealized version of love in your mind, it's about redefining what love truly means. Love is giving and receiving. Love is intentional presence, not disappearing every time vulnerability arises. Love is mutual connection, not pushing your partner away. Love is shared growth, not one person playing healer while the other remains a child. When someone can't offer these basics, you move on without regret or guilt. You smile, walk forward, and open yourself to someone capable of genuine partnership, someone who will stand by you, share the load, and allow you to be vulnerable when you need it. You didn't betray the avoidant. You stayed true to yourself. You may have become a smaller version of yourself to keep someone who always backed away, but real love never asks you to shrink. You can't carry their fear of intimacy. You can't love for them. You can't grow up for them. And most importantly, you are not at fault for choosing yourself. Let today's brave steps be your testament to the greatest love of all, the love you give yourself. When you love yourself enough, you will never settle for anything less than the full, worthy, and free version of you. If you've ever felt guilty after walking away from an avoidant partner, know you are not alone. Maybe you've lain awake at night, wondering if putting yourself first made you selfish. Maybe you clung to the hope they would change, only to wake up exhausted. If questions like, "Did I really do something wrong?" or "Did I betray them?" have haunted your mind, drop a single period in the comments below. A small dot, but a powerful symbol so you know someone is listening, empathizing, and that you don't have to walk this path alone. And if you're now ready to let go of the rescuer role and bravely choose yourself after endless waiting, trust that you're not facing this journey by yourself. I'm here for you to explore recovery, to build healthy boundaries, and to rediscover your true worth. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't saving someone else, but giving yourself a chance. Comment now, and let's begin the journey back toward a place where you are always deserving of love and respect.